Thanks for following the directions, and thanks for taking the seats that we asked you to take. Many of you have been in here when we have done presentations before, and I know that you understand our expectations. So the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is make sure you have your earbuds out. And the second thing I'm going to ask you to do is make sure you take your phone or your device and you turn it upside down. Okay? Typically when we're in here, we have administrators or members of Penn Ridge community speaking to you. When we do that, we're fortunate because those people have a really good idea and a good understanding of who we are, not just as a school, but who we are as a student body. Well, today we have special guests, and they're not from the Penn Ridge community. As they speak to us today, they will take some time to form opinions of who we are and what we're about. And the majority of those opinions are going to come from the way that we handle ourselves during this presentation. So I know that you understand what I expect and what we expect as a high school, and I hope that the presenters here today will have an opportunity to see that as well. Today we do have two people joining us. We have Dr. Kloss and we have Dr. Feingold Swain. And today they're here to talk about the importance of sleep. Now, many of you, or some people may have heard that there's conversations about schools talking about later start times. That's not what this conversation is about. This conversation is really about you understanding, you being teenagers, really understanding the importance and the impact of sleep. Dr. Kloss is a licensed clinical psychologist, and she works, is a licensed clinical psychologist in a behavioral sleep medicine program at the University of Pennsylvania. And Dr. Feingold Swain is a staff physician at the University of Pennsylvania in Student Health Services. They have taken their career and their passion in working with students. They're both moms. They have children, teenagers, as well as children soon to be teenagers. And the topic that they're talking about today isn't just important to them professionally, it's important to them personally. And I think you'll get a really good sense of that as they go through their presentation. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to them. If you don't mind, if you can give a nice Penn Ridge welcome to our special guest.
Sleep is my favorite activity, and one of the best things about this today is this is the first time you could sit in like a classroom auditorium setting. And if you fall asleep, I will not take offense to that. Feel free. This could be your nap time. I'm okay with that. And to keep you awake long enough to share with you our experience and expertise about sleep. And hopefully that you'll have some good take-home messages today. So we frame the presentation in terms of questions, things that we encounter, things that come up among our teenagers, among my patients, among the community. And so the first question is, why are we here? Why are Amanda and I here? One of the things that we want to think about, and we're wondering if you experience, how many of you find that it takes 2, 3, 4, 5 times of a snooze button to get up in the morning? Okay, yeah, I imagine many of you. Do you ever feel like you suffer from presenteeism? You've heard of absenteeism. Presenteeism is this idea that you're here, some of you might have this right now, but you're not really here. You're like somewhere kind of daydreaming or thinking about something else while you're supposed to be paying attention. Maybe your parents or some dictate has made you say, oh, you need to get in bed by 10 or 11 o'clock at night. And you find yourself in bed, but you cannot sleep. That no matter what it takes, you just cannot fall asleep before 10 or 11 o'clock. Or you do fall asleep in these kinds of settings or in your classrooms. Or maybe it takes large grandes to get you moving in the morning or get you through your homework or your activities in the afternoon. And maybe the weekends become a time where you just crash. The tiredness and the sleepiness build up so much that you have difficulty just getting stuff done. That's why we're here. You may be sleep deprived, thereby craving sleep. And many individuals at your age do experience this. So the National Sleep Foundation, this gives you an idea, Sleep needs change. Obviously, when you're a baby and an infant and in kindergarten, your sleep need is very different from when you're a teenager or when you're an adult. But I'd like to call your attention to the sleep that you need as an adolescent. And that falls between a minimum of 8 hours, and let me just do a quick show of hands. How many of you got at least 8 hours of sleep last night? Okay, very few, okay, not at all. And it usually ranges between 8.5 and 9.5 hours is what teens really need. So it's very likely you are sleep deprived, and you're not alone. Teen sleep deprivation has become a national epidemic, such that 25% of adolescents sleep in less than 6 hours per night. And that's a huge deficit of the 8.5-hour requirement. And it can be crushing. So the second question we have, as we start to build this idea that you're relating on this, you're understanding, why is it so painful to wake up for school? Okay? Well, there's the obvious. School can be painful, right? You see all these boulders, exams, peer pressures, hard to keep appointments, daily upsets. Hopefully you're not paying too many overdue bills right now, but homework deadlines. There's a lot of pressures about coming to school. So sometimes school is just hard. But we want to share this other reason with you. There's the not so obvious. So in the deep center of your brain, in the suprachiasmatic nucleus, is a hormone release, and it's called the Dracula of hormones, and I'm sure you've heard about it. It's called melatonin. And there's something that happens at the time of puberty, at adolescence, somewhere in middle school, that the melatonin secretion changes. And this is a biological change that has behavioral implications. And there becomes a delay in your sleep cycle, such the melatonin, which may typically have been released when you're younger, in earlier hours, it doesn't get secreted till later. And it promotes, and this is a sleep hormone, it's what enables you to feel sleepy and stay asleep. And teenagers have a delayed cycle that makes it nearly impossible to fall asleep prior to 11 p.m. Even if you try, even if you're trying to be really healthy and get into bed early, many of you will have a very difficult time falling asleep prior to 11 p.m. And think about this. If you need to wake up, I heard you're starting at 7:15 a.m. in the morning, and so if you need to wake up at 6 to get yourself to school on time, you're getting 7 hours of sleep at most. And my guess is it's even less than that for many of you on a regular basis. So if you have a deficit of at least an hour per night for 5 nights per week, you're already going into the weekend with a 5-hour sleep debt. So you're craving sleep, and the sleep deprivation accumulates, and you will see in a minute what effect that has on you. And another thing that happens is when the alarm wakes you up out of desperately needed REM sleep. So there's two things happening in adolescence. When you need to wake up at 6 a.m., not only are you sleep deprived because you have to get up so early, but you're also waking up at a time when you're getting REM sleep, or rapid eye movement sleep. And the importance of that sleep is that is critical for memory consolidation, and your mood. Okay, it's a major regulator of those features. So it's a physiological regulator. And when we wake you up at that time, and when I wake my teens up early in the morning, we are robbing them of that critical piece of sleep. So before I transition you to Amanda, I leave up here this little cartoon, delayed circadian rhythm, but this gives you a sense of what it's like. It's very difficult to get to bed at night at the time that would be desirable, but it's also very difficult to get yourself moving in the morning, and that is very typical of high school students. All right, Amanda, hand it over.
Okay, great, thanks. So the next question is, how does sleep affect grades? I mean, we can stand up here and talk to you about the fact that you need more sleep, but we want to make it accessible information. We want to have this real-world effect. And so we know that REM sleep, which is a stage of sleep where you get these larger chunks the more you sleep over the course of the night, is really important for making memories, for taking the material that you've learned before you went to bed that night and having it stay in your brain. It's really important for helping you improve performance, so on tests and things like that. And they've done lots of really mean experiments where they purposely sleep deprive people, and they really don't do well. And so we know that when you don't get enough sleep, you have difficulty with paying attention, you have difficulty with concentration. Some people find it really hard to figure out if they have attention deficit disorder or if they just need more sleep. There's an overlap there. We know that you're going to have difficulty understanding and processing new material and performing the way you want to on tests. And honestly, if you're not getting enough sleep, you probably don't feel as motivated to learn either. And that's related also to mood, right? So why does my mood tank when I'm not getting enough sleep? Sometimes you don't even realize that you haven't gotten enough sleep. You just feel terrible. The world is coming to an end. And then maybe, if you're lucky, you realize, oh, wait a minute, I haven't been getting enough sleep. That's what's going on here. And we know that for people that are sleep deprived, they really have a much higher risk of developing anxiety, general stress, depression. They also have trouble controlling impulses. And in some ways, this is related to substance use and abuse, but it's just a lot more difficult to rein things in, to kind of control yourself when you haven't gotten enough sleep. Oh, I'm going to hand it back to Jeff.
Right here and go back and forth. So the other question that comes up, because I think really, as Amanda was saying, what I'm hoping you're leaving here today with an idea is how does sleep deprivation affect you personally? And some of you, we do also realize some of you may sleep just fine, and you may be like, I don't need to hear this or whatever, but part of it is really understanding how does sleep affect my life, and how does it affect my optimal performance, and my health, and my safety? So one of the questions that's often come up for us is, does not getting enough sleep, does it make you sick if you don't get enough sleep? Does it really affect you? And the two greatest findings that we have are probably the most important one. So the answer to the question is yes, and let's talk about how. So doesn't that look good? Did you already have lunch? I don't know if you already had lunch, right? That probably looks pretty good. It does increase, so sleep deprivation, and this is across the board for adolescents, adults, even young children. It increases the likelihood for you to make unhealthy food choices, crave carbohydrates, and eat junk food, okay? It actually, the sleep in your body is an important regulator of appetite hormones and what we call satiety hormones. So things that satisfy, the hormones that let you know you're full. And when you don't get enough sleep, and when you're sleep deprived, those hormones become out of balance, and they actually make you crave carbohydrates. So if you crave junk food, in part, it could be due to the effect of sleep deprivation. And that's why you will hear in the media in some places that there is some kind of a link between being overweight and being sleep deprived. And they tend to go hand in hand because of the types of food choices you make. And also, as Amanda was saying, when you're sleep deprived, it actually lowers your inhibitions, okay? So you're more likely to say, oh, forget it, I don't need to eat healthy, I'm just gonna reach for whatever's convenient. And so you actually become less inhibited, and when does that happen more? Usually towards the later hours of the evening and at night. So that's important to keep in mind. And the other thing is we enter into cold and flu season, and if we're not in it already, the immune system is compromised. There's a lot of literature suggesting that sleep deprivation actually changes immune function in your body. So yes, you are more likely to be immune compromised and more likely to become sick. So that's something to think about. How much sleep am I getting? What is the rate that I'm getting colds and flu and respiratory infections, etc.? So another variable that comes up a lot is the relationship between sleep and academic or athletic performance, okay? And here is, how does this affect my game, okay? And it's not just, basketball, any kind of sports, lacrosse, field hockey, basketball, swimming, etc. All these kinds of sports, we're recognizing there is a relationship between your sleep and your athletic performance. NBA have hired sleep consultants and coaches to help athletes improve athletics performance by improving their sleep. And that's important to think about. This is even the NFL. They've looked at different places, and they're hiring sleep consultants to help optimize the sleep that they get. Stanford basketball players increased sleep time, and in one study saw the following. There were faster sprints, increased shooting accuracy, improvements in ratings of fatigue, mental and physical well-being. So there's not a ton of literature on this right now, but there's a growing amount of research to suggest that the sleep you get can actually affect your performance. And that's something for you to think about as well when you're participating, especially in competitive athletic events. And lastly, sleep deprivation can contribute to sports injuries in adolescence. There is a study suggesting, or a couple studies, that when you're getting less than 8 hours, it actually compromises or makes you more likely to get injuries when you're playing sports. And that includes things, just like physical bone orthopedic injuries, but also things like concussion. And so we really do understand, or we come to understand how critical that is with sleep. Lastly, for me, and then we'll transition again, how is driving while sleepy like driving drunk? Okay, you might not think about this, and hopefully you're not thinking about this, but I want to drive this home to you in terms of recognizing we don't have a way of detecting how sleepy you are, but I want you to become mindful of how your sleep can affect your driving performance. How many students are driving out there? How many of you have your, all right, so quite a few. I know we have like the juniors and seniors right now. So here's some interesting statistics. So drivers between the ages of 16 and 25 years old have greater than half of fatigue-related traffic crashes per year. So that's a lot of accidents related to fatigue from 16 to 25 years old. This is probably the most striking. So you heard the term the legal limit. Driving while intoxicated, the legal limit is when they measure your blood alcohol level, 0.08 is the legal limit for alcohol intoxication. Driving while sleepy is equivalent to a blood alcohol content that's at the legal limit, okay, of less than 5 hours. So if you're sleeping on any given night 5 hours or less, it's equivalent to driving while drunk. And when you think about that, it's because of the same things you would see: reaction time, attention, memory processing, all of those things come into play. And that's something that we really like to think about. And lastly, teens who report inadequate sleep are more likely to drink while driving, ride with a driver who has been drinking, or not wear seatbelts or safety helmets. Okay, so it's not only the driving while being sleep deprived, but it's also the choices that one makes when they're driving.
Well, it's all coming back to impulse control. Okay, so has anyone heard that screens are bad for sleep? Anyone? Has anyone heard that? No, it's only material to you. Yeah. So, why does everyone say screens are so bad for sleep? What is the big deal with screens? Okay. There are a couple of things. We're going to focus on screens at night. There may be issues with screens throughout the day, but we're going to talk about why we're not fans of using a screen in your face at night. First off, screens can act like a psychological stimulant, okay? Has anyone ever noticed that no one is asleep on social media? Isn't that strange? Don't you think you should be able to pick up Facebook or see a tweet that says, okay, I'm going to bed now? No, nobody does that on social media. Everybody's awake all night long, right? There's a 24-hour news cycle. Well, you can turn on your TV or your screen at any time, and there's a lot of information that's coming at you from all over the world, right? And that tends to be stimulating. It's hard to think that you can just shut off when there's so much going on around you, right? It takes an effort to do that. We know that the light that's going into your eyes is also helping to suppress your melatonin. So Jackie mentioned earlier, melatonin, it's this Dracula hormone. I didn't make that up. But the idea is that it should be rising around the time that you want to be getting sleepy. But when you put a screen and that light shines into your face, that's actually telling your body, oh, no, hold off, it's still daytime, you still need to be awake and alert. That's the exact opposite of what you want to be happening around the time that you want to be going to sleep. So when you get this more light, you're getting alert at a time when you don't want to be. And then, of course, when it comes time to try and get yourself out of bed in the morning, you're less alert. We know from studies that have been done that if you just have a device in your room, even if it's not on, but if you have the device in your room, just that awareness seems to impact your total sleep. So you tend to get less total sleep, and you also tend to have not as good sleep quality. And I do think that there's something to be said for knowing that you could get an alert, like your phone's right there, you're kind of anticipating it. I know this because I take call overnight, and I know that my sleep is not as good, even if nobody calls me. I'm waiting for that call, right? And there's something to be said for that affecting your sleep quality. Interestingly, also, like if there are people that watch things that are particularly violent, or like if you're a gamer and you're doing more violent games, we know that that kind of programming within a 30-minute time frame before bed tends to be associated with a longer time to fall asleep. It kind of makes sense, right? It's kind of hard to disconnect from that. Oh, the lots of murmurs. Okay, we have gamers in here. And then also, you know, any kind of interactive screens, right, where you're doing anything with that screen, means that you tend to have a much greater impact on your sleep than just watching TV as a passive observer. So again, I think that makes sense. So now we've talked about how sleepy you all are. So let's give you some information about caffeine. First of all, Jackie and I are big fans of caffeine. There is nothing wrong with caffeine, okay? You don't want to overdo it on the caffeine. Probably somewhere around 200 milligrams a day is okay. For the sake of comparison, a 5-hour energy has about 200-ish milligrams of caffeine. So one 5-hour energy is probably the total amount of caffeine that I recommend that you have for your entire day. Okay. And then there are different comparisons on here. If you drink coffee, if you make your own cup of coffee at home, that's probably about 100 milligrams. But if you're getting coffee from other places, or if you're doing a Red Bull, you know, this gives you some comparison for how much caffeine you might want to get at a time. As some of you may know, when you have too much caffeine, it actually makes it harder to concentrate, right? You want to find your sweet spot where you're a little more alert and you feel more on top of your game. Too much, you start to feel like things are falling apart, your heart's racing, you have to go to the bathroom, it's not a good thing. And what we also want you to stay away from, or at least be aware of, is what's called the stimulant sedation loop, which basically, I think, bears a striking resemblance to this cartoon, right? You're so tired when you get up in the morning. You're sleepy. You need something to wake you up. You get some caffeine. You drink all the coffee. And then you're just kind of like on edge. And then you need to use something, or you feel like you want to use something to help make you sleepy enough to go to sleep the next night. And then it just repeats and repeats. And that's a not good place to be. While we're on the topic of drugs, legal and otherwise, I think it is helpful to put some information up here. So, of course, none of you are the legal drinking age, but just so that you know, alcohol does have some sedative effects. Sedative means sleepy. So it can make you sleepy. It also can make you fall asleep more quickly. But remember how we talked about that REM sleep is doing a lot of good stuff overnight, helping your memory, helping your mood regulation, dreams, just like dreams. Well, alcohol decreases that time. And so that's why people who are over the age of 21, when they drink alcohol and they sleep, they often wake up and they don't feel like they got as much sleep as they should have. It doesn't feel like refreshing sleep, okay? So we say alcohol is a net negative effect on sleep. What about marijuana? There's a lot of talk about marijuana right now. There's unfortunately not a ton of research that's been done on it. But what we know about marijuana is that it's probably pretty similar to alcohol. It may help people fall asleep. I know, I said marijuana in high school. But overall, it doesn't have a good effect on sleep, okay? Nicotine. Nicotine is interesting. It actually tends to have a stimulant effect, so it tends to kind of make people feel a little a little caffeinated almost, and that actually tends to interfere with sleep. So different way it works in alcohol or marijuana, but overall, net negative. You see where we're going with this, hopefully. We do not recommend using substances to help with sleep. Oops, sorry. Jumped ahead. Oh, okay, so, last question. Why can't I sleep the night before a big exam? Does this resonate? Does anyone have this experience? Yeah, I mean, and it doesn't have to be a big exam, thank you for the enthusiasm. I mean, it could be before you catch a flight, before you're anticipating anything. Sometimes it's hard to settle down and get to sleep. So we want to give you some pointers about how to manage this, okay? The night before a big exam, or insert whatever experience you want to put in that box. You want to give your body some time to kind of come down, chill out before bed. You can do some things that kind of give your body cues that bedtime is coming, right? What are some things that kind of relax you, take you down a bit, but probably not playing a violent game, for example. But maybe it's taking a shower, maybe it's doing some stretches, reading, folding your laundry. You all do your own laundry and you're really on top of your chores. Things that just kind of tell your body to calm down, be prepared, be ready to get in bed and relax, right? No screens. About 30, maybe up to 60 minutes before bed. Again, you don't want to be giving your body this sense that it's time to wake up and be alert, okay? Relaxing, quiet activities. Have a plan for what you do if you can't sleep, all right? Let's be honest, this doesn't always work. Sometimes you're just having difficulty getting to sleep. It really stinks to be in bed trying to sleep. As Jackie just told me, and I love this, I keep repeating it, trying to sleep is like trying to digest. I mean, you can't just sit there and like will yourself to digest lunch. It's just not going to happen, right? You can't will yourself to sleep either. So you want to just do something else. If sleep isn't happening, get out of bed and do something else, and then get back in bed and try and sleep again. And then think about how you're going to manage that next day if you're going to be sleepy. It's not a big deal to have a sleepy day, right? You can manage it. You can drink some caffeine. You can move around. You can get some light. You can get some exercise. You can kind of tell your body, hey, we're going to get through this. It's going to be okay. So, now what? That's everything you need to know. We covered every possible topic. No, not really. But we want to give you guys some action items, right? So think about making sleep a priority, okay? Sleep is not just something that happens when you've crossed off everything else on your list. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. You have to plan for it. You have to think about making it something that is going to be on that list that you're going to get to. Naps are okay. I mean, some of you may nap already, but if you're holding yourself back from it, you don't need to be afraid of it. Think about incorporating it into your schedule at a time that's going to work for you if you're really just not able to get enough sleep at night. You can go back to napping. You might not have done that since you were a toddler, but that's okay. No DWS. Okay, we're making up acronyms now. No driving while sleeping. It's a terrible thing, okay? It's not helpful for other people on the road. It's not helpful for the people you're driving around. So please be aware of that. Use caffeine, right? There's nothing wrong with caffeine. You just want to know how it works and how it works for you and how to time it right so that then you're not making it difficult to fall asleep at night. There's nothing wrong with caffeine. Try to keep a regular schedule. This is really challenging because what tends to happen is like feast or famine, right? So you're like starving yourself to sleep all week long, and then you get to the weekends and you just want to feast on it. Not great for your body. If you've ever been jet lagged, you know that you suddenly get somewhere and you're on a totally different sleep or wake schedule. That's kind of what you're doing on the weekend. You're sleeping at times when you would be awake normally, Monday through Friday. So you're jet lagging. It's like you go to another place on the weekends and then you try and get back to be at Penridge High School bright and early on Monday morning, and you really don't feel good. And so that's why we really encourage you to get into the habit of a fairly regular schedule that you can keep even on Saturdays and Sundays so you're not jet lagging yourself. Oh, okay. And then ask for help. So there's lots of information in the community, I'm sure here, now that we've done this education, but if you think that sleep is an issue, please talk talk to your pediatrician or your family physician or let people here know, lots of resources. And obviously, managing your stress is super helpful. We all know that affects sleep. That's a whole other job. So the good news is, if you can make some changes, get adequate sleep, you're going to feel an improved mood, you're going to feel a lot more energy, you're going to see an improvement in athletic performance. Hopefully we'll see less car crashes. Hopefully you'll appreciate that your health is improved. I think, if anyone here is concerned about test scores, just a guess, your test scores are going to be improved if you're getting more sleep for all the reasons that we illustrated. And certainly you should appreciate that your attention is improved, your memory, and that you feel more motivated to learn. And more on school performance. So, I'll go back there. That was everything we had. Thank you for your attention. We really do appreciate you guys did a great job.
All right, guys, for a second. Thanks. Thanks.